Welcome back to the weekly Brooklyn property market update brought to you by Engel and Volker's Brownstone Brooklyn. Here we are. I'm Catriona, and of course this is Donald that you can see next to me. So we had a very nice Thanksgiving, and here we are in Hanukkah, and the holidays are racing away at a pace.
Yeah, beautiful week last week. Got a few days with the family out of town, and it was nice kind of recouping because, as you know, still kind of full bore here, as we're going to touch on in a second here of things being traded, tied up, going into contract, and so forth at a level that is seems to be in excess of what we've seen at this time of year in the past, notwithstanding what happened last year, but certainly historically. So that's good for people who are out there trying to transact and sell their properties.
Definitely. And of course, we're now at the end of November, so we have all that lovely November data that we will reference more next week than this week. So let's start by looking at last week, which of course was a holiday week. And let's talk about the luxury market. And I believe there were only 4 new to market listings last week. Is that one of the lowest numbers we've seen?
It is, yeah. And as we've talked about in the past, any kind of holiday week leading up to a 3-day weekend, with those holidays typically on Monday. This holiday a little different. Thanksgiving always on a Thursday, and ending up with like a 4-day weekend or longer for some people. No big surprise, not a lot of activity. So 4 deals, same exact number as 12 months ago. 4 deals, same week last week, and only 2 other weeks had we seen less number of new to market activity, and that was in last week of December when we had 2, which again is probably a week where even less participants are around than the week of Thanksgiving.
So what about the below 2.25 million market? Because again, there was a visible drop in the number of new to market listings there as well.
Yeah, so 16 last week, which is again certainly off the pace of just the prior week when there was 35, 51 before that, 56 before that, and even higher. So it's trending down, but a big drop, going down almost 50% there over the prior week. And similar to the luxury side, quite a few more going into contract 12 months ago, 28 actually, which was more than what we saw last week, which was great. It was kind of the pent up demand, the pent up COVID demand as activity coming out of the summer, where we saw record activity of in contract and new to market listings starting in August through the fall. And similarly, last couple of weeks in December of last year, only seen lesser numbers of 13 and 15 respectively the last 2 weeks for the sub 2.25 marketplace.
And what's the impact of that on some of the price per square foot numbers we're seeing for those listings that have gone into contract relative to those ones that are coming on the market? Yeah,
so on the luxury side, we're last week we saw an average price per square foot of 1,389 for those 19 deals, and the median asking price of 3.5, average asking price of 3.8. So both the median, the average gross price, average dollar per square foot below where the new to market numbers are for last week, even though only 4 deals. So seller expectations still above where new sellers anyway, where pre-existing sellers in the marketplace who've actually gotten their houses in the contract, homes gotten the contract, are. So a couple of different ways to read that, seeing, as you're out there this time of year, not a lot of supply, actually more demand than supply below the 2.25 for sure. Luxury likewise. So people getting deals done is one takeaway there. And anybody coming on line, certainly trying to tap into that disconnect of supply and demand of trying to do a little bit better. All this obviously, very hard because it's a big mix of assets in that pool of data that we're talking about. But anyway, that's a general kind of takeaway.
If we look at the below 2.25 million market and try to ascertain where most of that in contract activity is actually happening in terms of price points.
Yeah, so fairly typical of almost any week. Tremendous amount of activity between 600,000 and just under $1 million. So between 600 and 99K is the bulk of activity for sponsor condos last week. For 8 total condo sponsors in that price range, 8 resales, condo resales, and 10 co-ops. No townhouses down at that price point in the 16 neighborhoods that we track data in, which is understandable. But anyway, some big numbers there under that $1 million mark. People trying to, I guess, in some cases purposely stay under there, avoiding some additional tax.
Definitely. So price per square foot, as we know, a lot of people get hung up about that number when trying to judge value and whether something is priced correctly. Where does that really tell us, and what else should we be looking for in terms of how we tell people?
Yeah, it's certainly one metric to look at, in conjunction with the gross price. But different assets, it has a lesser level of reliability. Townhouses specifically, higher priced townhouses, it's hard to determine sometimes what the comparable square footage is because there's nothing in the public record as far as being, what condos, we see with condos where it's part of the registration of that condominium as a security, where the square footage is an important component of the description of that unit. Townhouse is not the same thing. Obviously there is a number in the public record. It's kind of open for interpretation, I think, in some cases, in that where is that garden level? Is it a basement? Is it cellar? Is the cellar finished, and so forth? And was an extension picked up by the city in their calculation of the square footage. So you're going to see a wide range out there, and almost no two townhomes, unless they're brand new or in a development, are going to be the same. So it's one metric, but shouldn't be leaned on too heavily for the townhouses. Condominiums for sure, especially if you're looking at a similar size unit configuration, 2-bedroom from one project to another. The differences there are going to be based on location, amenity package with the building, floor level views, and so forth. They're going to drive the difference in the dollar per square foot. And as we know, co-ops historically don't have square footage associated with them, only what we see kind of showing them up in the public record now as entered in by agents in some cases for the different platforms, but never had a requirement to indicate what the square footage of those units were. It was really only about room count. Room count was the comparable metric there, not square feet.
So that's it from us. Sorry if I was a little bit distracted there. The UPS guy was coming, trying to drop off a whole load of packages, of course, just as we were finishing up.
Time of year, we all turn into like little mini recycling centers with the amount of cardboard coming into the house.
Exactly. So check back in next week, folks. We'll be here talking about the end of the November roundup and, of course, the beginning of December. See you next week, Donald.